Hey guys, welcome back to Moto Ramblings. Patrick here, riding Big Yeller, my 2010 on the Goldwing. It's a beautiful afternoon after work, a little toasty, upper 80s, but got some shade here on the twisties. It's early enough and light enough that I think I'm going to take an extremely long way home tonight. And I thought I might share some of the ride with you. It is about 10 minutes of 6 p.m. It is late August. We are losing daylight every day, but I think I got plenty to do. A nice little loop that I normally like to do from home when I don't have much time. I want to say it's like an hour ride if I take it easy, an hour loop, close to it. But it's got serious twisties, got elevation changes, got some fantastic roads to ride on. So I think I'm going to do that as I head back to the house. I also wanted to talk just a little bit about keeping it real. I think I released a video already where I talk about how I became addicted to motorcycles. And I put the blame squarely on my dad. Now, my dad passed away. Wow, it's going to be October will be 8 years since he passed away. Never really got to do much riding with him. As much as he is the reason I became addicted, our lives just kind of went in different directions. He and my mom did some moving around. I did some moving around. But there was one ride that we took together that was pretty awesome. And as part of the Keeping It Real videos, I'm going to talk about that just a little bit right now. But it involves a brief backstory as to how this ride came about. I got sick. I had ulcerative colitis, and I ended up in the hospital. They had to take the colon out. I was in the hospital, for the first time I was in the hospital for 8 weeks, and I lost something like 60 pounds. And at that time, when you start out at 160 and you lose 60, it's not good. That was pretty scary looking. And, you know, they had to do an emergency surgery after waiting all this time, hoping I would get better. It didn't work. So they finally did the surgery, and they said that I nearly died. We'll talk about all that stuff in another video. This one is about my dad. While I was recovering, my first wife asked me for a divorce. And I wasn't at work because I could not go to work. I was ill. So I went and stayed with Mom and Dad for a little bit in New Hampshire until I got strong enough to go back home to a house by myself because my wife was gone. And that's a story that'll be in a future video. But before I went back to work, but when I was doing much better, Dad suddenly said, "Hey, we need to go for a ride." Now, at that time, he had a 1984 Goldwing, and I had a 1985 Goldwing. And we'd never really ridden together. I'm trying to think back. I honestly don't even know if we ever took even a short ride together. I don't think we were ever on our motorcycles at the same time going somewhere until my dad said, "Hey, we need to do something." And looking back on it, having conversations with my mom, you know, there was a distinct fear that I wasn't going to make it. And of course, I was oblivious to all that. I was in the hospital, and you know, When you're in your mid-20s, you're invincible. Even when you're sick, you're invincible. Oh, I'll be fine. Well, I guess they had some conversations that, they were worried about me. So when I started recovering and my dad realized that, hey, I was going to make it, he wasn't going to lose me, he said, let's go for a ride, which was the same thing as him saying, I love you, which is words that rarely spoken in my family. Don't know why. It just was not something I grew up with. We just didn't say it to each other very often. And so what we did was we left from my dad's house in New Hampshire on our Goldwings. And we cruised through a whole bunch of back roads up into Maine to a hunting cabin that he had gone to on many occasions with some buddies, obviously, hunting. But I wasn't a hunter. I never did that. And on this ride, it was a few hundred miles. It was several hours of riding. And we didn't stop a ton, but we did stop now and then. But we had intercoms going, and we had conversations while we were riding. And it was some of the best conversations I ever had with him until it got toward the end when he was sick and knew he was dying. He moved close, and we had a great relationship near the end where we did a lot of talking and speaking to each other. But anyway, on this trip we were communicating, and at this point I was still having trouble having a conversation with him. I was still intimidated by him, big tough guy, and never really got along. So it was, it was different for me as far as that goes. Well, we had an absolutely great time. We rode, I remember we saw moose along the way, critters running across the road, and, we just had a really good time. We stayed at the hunting cabin overnight. And of course, he drank. I don't drink, never did. But, we still had a really good time. And of course, we headed back, and I eventually got back to work, back to my life. And he stayed in New Hampshire. I was in Massachusetts at the time. We never rode again. Never rode together again. I shortly thereafter moved to North Carolina and brought my motorcycle with me. He eventually came to North Carolina, but by that time the motorcycle riding was done. He just couldn't see, couldn't hardly breathe, couldn't hardly walk. He was a sick man. And again, we'll talk about that on another video. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you, that if you have a chance to ride with family members, your children, your parents, brothers, sisters, just anybody that you can ride with that's close to you, do it every chance you get, because you just never know when it's not going to be there. I had one multi-day ride with my dad, and he loved motorcycles. I loved motorcycles. And for a little while, those passions overlapped. But life gets in the way sometimes, and you really need to do what you can to spend time with your loved ones. And if you have a shared love of something, share it together. Do something. Enjoy it. All right. I will come back in a little while and share some of the twisty roads with you. So for now, I'm going to say, hey, I hope everyone can stay well, stay safe. But most of all, stay happy. Go tell a loved one you love them. Motor Ramblings out.